They say that silence is golden, but in some situations, it can be very deadly. That's especially true when it comes to the Mafia, a crime syndicate with a rich history of silencing those who know too much. In fact, during their reign, they took out countless individuals who posed a threat to their illicit activities. In this video, we will explore the dark world of the Mafia and examine how they silenced witnesses to their crimes. From brutal beatings to calculated murders, these crime bosses spared no expense to keep their secrets buried. But before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future content. The first story we'll be looking at involves the infamous Bonanno crime family. In the early 1970s, a young man named Joseph Messino became an associate of the family. He quickly rose through the ranks, and by the time he was 29, he had become a capo regime, a higher-ranking position in the mafia hierarchy. However, his loyalty to the family would eventually be tested. When he was caught in possession of stolen property, despite his denials, the family decided to take matters into their own hands, and they assembled a group of soldiers to teach him a lesson he would never forget. They lured him to a secluded location under the pretense of a social gathering, but once he arrived, they pounced. They beat him brutally and left him for dead. Miraculously, he survived the attack, but he was left with permanent injuries that would haunt him for the rest of his life. This incident highlights the lengths to which the Mafia would go to maintain secrecy and control within their ranks. Even a minor offense like stealing from other members could result in a brutal beating or worse. Another case of a witness being silenced by the Mafia was that of Michael Franzese. A former member of the Colombo crime family, Franzese was arrested in 1986 for racketeering and fraud. During his trial, he testified against his former associates, providing the prosecution with valuable insights into the inner workings of the Mafia, however. After his testimony, he and his family became targets of the mob. His home was firebombed and he received numerous death threats. In order to protect himself and his family, Franzese agreed to enter the witness protection program. He was placed in a safe house and given a new identity. However, the Mafia did not give up easily. They continued to send threatening messages to Franzese, even in his new hiding place. It wasn't until 1997 that Franzese was finally allowed to return home, 11 years after he had been forced into hiding. This case demonstrates the lengths to which the Mafia will go to silence witnesses who threaten their way of life. Even when faced with the full force of the law, they will not hesitate to use violence and intimidation to protect their secrets. Now, let's look at the case of a woman who dared to speak out against the Mafia. In the early 1990s, a woman known only as Maria lived in the small Italian town of San Giovanni at Tiberio. She had recently separated from her husband and was living in a small apartment with her 2 children. Ouch. Her husband, however, was not the kind of man you wanted to mess with. He was a member of the local Mafia clan, and he was not happy about the separation. One day, Maria was at home with her children when a group of men broke into her apartment. She recognized them as members of her husband's clan, and she knew that they were there because of her. They had come to silence her. As the men closed in on her, Maria screamed for help, but nobody came to her rescue. The men beat her brutally and then forced her to watch as they killed her children. After making sure she understood the message, they let her live, but not without severe trauma. This horrific event highlights the brutality and ruthlessness of the Mafia. Even women and children were not safe from their wrath. If you crossed the Mafia, there was no telling what they might do to you or your loved ones. Another case of a witness being silenced by the Mafia was that of Dominic Gotti. Gotti was a member of the Gambino crime family, and he played a key role in several of the family's illegal activities. However, in the late 1980s, he began to have second thoughts about his lifestyle. He realized that he was in danger of going to prison for life, and he started to cooperate with the authorities. In 1990, he pleaded guilty to racketeering conspiracy and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. While in prison, he agreed to testify against his former associates, providing the government with valuable information about the Gambino crime family. However, this decision put a target on his back. As soon as he testified, the Mafia made it clear that he had betrayed them. His wife and children received death threats, and his life was in danger. In order to protect him and his family, the government placed them in the witness protection program. However, the Mafia did not give up easily. They tried to bribe, threaten, and even murder Gotti's family in order to get him to recant his testimony. In the end, it was the government that came out on top. Gotti's testimony helped to bring down several high-ranking members of the Gambino crime family, and he was able to remain in the witness protection program. This next case shows how far the Mafia will go to keep their secrets hidden. In the late 1990s, a man named Benny Squitieri was arrested for drug trafficking in Las Vegas. Squitieri was a member of the Genovese crime family, and he had been involved in the illegal drug trade for many years. However, he was not willing to cooperate with the authorities. When faced with the possibility of a long prison sentence, Squitieri agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge. However, he made it clear that he would not testify against his fellow mobsters. This put him in danger, as the other mobsters would want to silence him to prevent him from testifying. Squitieri's lawyer, David Chesnoff, knew that his client was in danger. He received numerous anonymous phone calls and letters threatening Squitieri's life. Chesnoff believed that the Mafia was behind the threats, and he urged Squitieri to cooperate with the government in order to protect himself. However, Squitieri refused. He was willing to take the risk and face the consequences. In the end, Squitieri was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, he was released early after serving only 3 years. During his time in prison, he received numerous death threats, but he was able to survive and live the rest of his life in relative peace. This case highlights the Mafia's code of omerta, which requires members to remain silent about their activities, even in the face of danger. It also demonstrates the lengths to which the Mafia will go to protect their secrets. In conclusion, the Mafia has a long history of silencing witnesses to their crimes. From brutal beatings to calculated murders, they have left no stone unturned in their efforts to keep their secrets buried. These crime bosses have shown that they are not afraid to use violence and intimidation to protect their way of life. But their reign of terror is slowly coming to an end. As more and more people speak out against them, the Mafia's grip on power is weakening. Now, it's time to hear from you. What do you think is the most important thing to come out of this video? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.